August 11th and 12th, 2017. Charlottesville, Virginia in the southern United States. For 2 days, this small, ordinary, normally peaceful city is seized by violent protests. On one side, hundreds of anti-racist activists.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
And on the other, a horde of white supremacists who've come to protest.
Everybody wanted to go. It didn't matter what group you were a part of. It's just like we need as many white supremacists there as possible. So the general atmosphere on the way to Charlottesville and back was like, hey, we're getting ready to go take our country back, save our heritage type thing.
Charlottesville demonstrations came about during a general battle in this country over Confederate memorials. Robert E. Lee, who was the famous of the Confederate generals, had a statue in Charlottesville that there was a lot of debate about taking it down.
It is U.S. history that is being erased. Period.
For 2 days, more than 1,000 furious far-right activists gather in Charlottesville to protest. Among them are representatives of the oldest and most famous racist organization in American history, the Ku Klux Klan.
Walk out! Every day!
Charlottesville looked like a war for a few days there. The police were terrible. They did not keep the people apart. They did not keep the white supremacists from attacking other people violently. And as a result, the streets of the city became a war zone. Where there are racists and anti-racists fighting back and forth, and ultimately, one particular neo-Nazi drove his car into a crowd of people and murdered a woman, Heather Heyer, as well as badly injuring some 20 other people.
Holy shit! Holy shit!
The murderer's name is James Alex Fields, a young far-right activist. The day after the tragedy, Heather Heyer's death makes headlines as an entire nation watches in outrage. Donald Trump, then President of the United States, is called upon to make a statement to defuse the situation. But instead of putting out the fire, his August 13th press conference merely fans the flames.
You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
The statement after the Charlottesville, good people on both sides, where you saw the neo-Nazis, where you saw the anti-Semitism, I think it has inspired people once again to say it's all right to hate, and at those extreme areas to use terrorism, like taking your car and running over a protester.
As a result of the media scandal caused by the murder and the uncomfortable press conference that follows, a family secret the former American president would have undoubtedly preferred to keep quiet is revealed. When he was young, his father, Fred Trump, was himself a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
The ideas of the Klan of preserving society as it used to be before huge waves of immigration, huge social changes, that was really appealing to very large numbers of white men in America. So for someone like Fred Trump to be a supporter of the Klan, it makes perfect sense.
But the ties between Donald Trump and the KKK extend well beyond his father's past. Since the launch of his presidential campaign in 2016, the former U.S. president has become a new idol for many white supremacists, starting with David Duke. The controversial figure, who remains popular with neo-Nazis today, rose to fame in the U.S. as a longtime leader of the Ku Klux Klan.
I'm overjoyed to see Donald Trump and most Americans embrace most of the issues that I've championed for years. My slogan remains America First.
While Trump was running in 2015 and 2016, one particular neo-Nazi leader called him our great leader, our fearless leader. So, David Duke, the former Klan leader, said any white person who voted against Trump was voting against his race, was a traitor to his race.
What would your grandfather think of you?
In order to understand the anger of a certain portion of white America, especially in the southern U.S., we must travel back a few years in time, to 2008 to be exact.
Obama, I solemnly swear. I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
This was the year Barack Obama became the 44th President of the United States and, most importantly, the first black president. This revolutionary, historic event was celebrated around the world. But not everyone in the land of Uncle Sam shared this enthusiasm.
Mr. Obama has been accused of being both a communist and a fascist.
In many southern states, the election of a biracial man as president was reason for outrage.
When Barack Obama was elected, all these white people went out and bought guns because they thought that indeed this is a turning point in their history, that now blacks are going to take over and of course come after white people because now they have the support of a black man in the White House to do that.
For far-right organizations, this climate of rejection and hostility towards Obama was a godsend. Starting in 2008, the number of groups promoting white supremacy began to skyrocket. In the span of just 12 years, the election of Barack Obama awoke a white, reactionary, ultra-nationalist America, while Donald Trump's brutal style and populist discourse made racism more commonly accepted in the U.S. Each of these two presidents contributed, albeit in radically different ways, to the reemergence of white supremacist organizations like the Ku Klux Klan.
The Klan as a symbol, the Klan as a set of values and an ideology is just as relevant as it ever has been. It has simply morphed into these new forms, taken on these new hatreds, but it remains a viable and important force in the United States.
But there's about 140-year history of the Klan, and in those 130, 140 years, the Ku Klux Klan in America has done more, certainly, than any other group or movement to bring the most extreme right-wing ideas into the political mainstream.
Death to our enemies! Death to our enemies!
The Ku Klux Klan. The history of this organization, with its deeply mysterious name, symbols, and customs, is closely linked to the fate of its country, the United States. It all started in the early 1860s with the American Civil War. The conflict saw the armies of the 23 Union states in the northern and western parts of the country, known as the Yankees, face off against the 11 southern states that had decided to secede and were known as the Confederates.
The United States in 1861 engaged in a civil war in the northern states versus the southern states. But the primary reason was the institution of slavery. The northern states felt that the slavery should be restricted.
Those Confederate states, first led by South Carolina, wanting to actually protect slavery. They really believed that slavery was the best organization in the world for society.
It was a war of unprecedented violence, causing more than 800,000 deaths and ending with the defeat of the South when their leader, General Lee, surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant, who was leading the armies of the U.S. president at the time, Abraham Lincoln.
The American Civil War was a huge conflict, the largest this country has ever seen. It was an unbelievably bloody war. The South was not only defeated, it was crushed.
The southern states were in despair. Their whole society had been disrupted and turned upside down by a war that had resulted in massive deaths and destruction.
In 1865, After the war, many people living in the South refused to accept the defeat and its consequences. Most notably, the adoption of the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which officially abolished slavery.
They basically said that it was unacceptable. The black people they saw working in the cotton fields were in no way their equals. And if they weren't their equals, now that they had been freed, they would become extremely dangerous and want to take their place. They'd want money, and they would rape their women. They actually thought they would rape their women.
At the end of the Civil War, there's this anger, this bitterness among white citizens in the South, so that not only do they form organizations such as the Knights of the White Camellia, they form the White League, and these organizations become like terrorist groups in terms of trying to intimidate African Americans.
In Pulaski, Tennessee, a handful of Army veterans, all former Confederate officers, decided to start their own organization. They gave it a strange name, the Ku Klux Klan.
The name Ku Klux Klan came from the Greek word for circle, kuklus, allied with the Scottish word clan, really because it just sounded good. Ku Klux Klan, and it eventually became Ku Klux Klan, 3 separate words.
Within a few years, the small group of officers became an increasingly powerful organization, with its own structure and a leader named Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Nathan Bedford Forrest was the worst kind of man. Let me say, because it's true, he was one of the greatest cavalry officers who've ever lived in this country or any other. He was an incredible fighter, but also a vicious son of a bitch.
He had achieved great kind of acclaim and fame for his exploits during the Civil War. At the same time, he'd achieved great infamy, particularly around the Fort Pillow massacre, that he was known for the killing of unarmed black Union soldiers.
Under Nathan Bedford Forrest's leadership, the Ku Klux Klan quickly made a name for itself. Their goal was to sow terror in the heart of the black community in the American South. To that end, they decided to dress up to make themselves look scarier.
They believed that the black population of the South were ignorant and superstitious, and as such, they would truly believe that when the Klan rode in on their horses in these costumes, the local black community would truly believe that ghosts or demons had appeared among them.
But at the time, more than anything else, it was the extreme brutality of the crimes committed by the Ku Klux Klan that caused panic among the African American community. They were known for lynching their victims and committing all kinds of murder. Their violence was out of control.
They would go on raids in black communities, which were punitive missions. And what was the purpose of these punitive missions? To scare black people and put them in their place. In order to maintain their power over black people, they had to keep them in the lower ranks of society by the use of violence. The Ku Klux Klan was first and foremost an instrument of violence, and that violence often went as far as murder.
In the 3 years between 1865 and 1868, under Nathan Bedford Forrest's leadership, the Klan took the lives of several thousand victims. This bloodbath left Ulysses S. Grant, the new President of the United States, no choice but to pass a law, the Klan Act, in 1871. It made the KKK illegal and authorized him to send troops to the South to take the terrorist organization out of action. But in reality, the organization had already achieved its goal. Slavery may have been abolished, but it had been replaced by Jim Crow laws, which imposed racial segregation.
And what the Jim Crow laws was made segregation legal in the state. And you had a separations of races from, and it's very pervasive.
In a way, the Klan won. Because people in the South were continuing to think and live in racial terms. Dividing society by racial characteristics meant that there were separate schools, for example. Black kids and white kids didn't go to the same schools.
Black people and white people couldn't be buried in the same cemeteries. They couldn't ride on the same cars. They couldn't ride on the same trains.
Between the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century, with segregation, the living conditions of black people in the South remained extremely challenging. But the Ku Klux Klan, which was officially illegal, seemed to be a thing of the past. In 1915, however, things would change once again with the release of a famous film, The Birth of a Nation. It was the first blockbuster in the history of film. Some 30 million Americans saw it in theaters.
It was really the first movie ever made which had a complete narrative history. There were lots of action sequences. It told a story that was dramatic. It had accompanying music and so on. And so the movie was a sensation. All over America, people went to see this movie, a full-length feature movie. We'd never seen anything like it in this country.
The film Birth of a Nation was extraordinarily influential, and a lot of its influence was that movies were absolutely new. Probably the great majority of people who watched Birth of a Nation had never seen a film.
The story that so fascinated Americans was that of the Civil War and its effect on the southern states. The movie took enormous liberties with its interpretation of actual historic events, presenting members of the Ku Klux Klan as veritable heroes, the defenders of widows and orphans.
Birth of a Nation was explicitly based on the book, The Klansman, and it told the story of the Klan saving the white South from the, savage black beasts who were taking over and raping white women and so on and so on.
During the Civil War, poor white people suffered because Republicans and uppity Negroes came into power in the South, mistreated the good white people of the South, and indeed had to start the Klan at that point to save white people from these terrible Negroes and carpetbaggers.
One of the movie's biggest fans was William Joseph Simmons, a Methodist pastor, originally from Alabama. In fact, it inspired him to bring the Ku Klux Klan back to life.
William Joseph Simmons sees the Klan, and particularly the imagery of the Klan, as a way to create the hook for a new fraternal organization.
In 1915, the very same year that Birth of a Nation was released, just a few months later, William Simmons held a ceremony on Stone Mountain in Georgia, outside of Atlanta, where there's a big monument to the Confederate heroes of the Civil War, in which he re-inaugurated a new Klan. So the ceremony was held. There were just 16 people on the mountain that day.
In order to get around the law making the Ku Klux Klan illegal, Simmons renamed the organization the Invisible Empire of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. In 1920, he hired Mary Elizabeth Tyler and Edward Young Clark, a couple who specialized in marketing, to promote his new organization. It was their idea to embrace an aesthetic inspired by the Birth of a Nation. They saw the costumes and symbols of the fictional version of the KKK as a propaganda tool, one that would prove to be extremely effective.
And we should be clear, the imagery that he's using is being drawn specifically from the book and the film. The idea of this very specific kind of Klan uniform, even the idea of burning crosses, that wasn't true of the Reconstruction era Klan. Those were myths created by popular culture that then get adopted into the founding aesthetic and the actions of the Klan in the 19-teens and the 1920s.
It drew a lot on English and especially Scottish history. Things like cross burnings, which had been used, in fact, by medieval Scottish tribes to signal one another as a kind of call to arms.
This was when the Ku Klux Klan adopted the traditional imagery we know and recognize today, with its symbols, costumes, ceremonies, and strange names.
The nomenclature of the Klan, all the strange names, Imperial Wizard, Exalted Cyclops, the Claylift, the Clud, and so on, these were the kinds of titles that they thought were Egyptian, that sounded very exotic and far out.
Every name started with KL, the Klan, the Claylifts, the Claverns, and so on, which was just a way of making it sound a little exotic and a little Middle Eastern.
The letter K was also the origin of the symbol of the Ku Klux Klan, a white cross on a red background. This emblem appears on the patches stitched on Klansmen robes, and more recently on the flags they carry during protests.
They have this badge on. It's called the blood drop insignia, and it's an X with a blood drop falling down. And the X is actually 4 Ks back to back for Knights of the Ku Klux Klan.
To add another level of mystery to the aura of the new Ku Klux Klan, they developed a range of symbols freely inspired by other secret societies, such as the Knights Templar and the Freemasons.
The Klan invented a lot of so-called history. Some of their names and offices came straight out of the Catholic tradition. And this has to do with the fact that they were, in many ways, one of many fraternal organizations that use that kind of symbolism and so on.
The Klan has 7 symbols. You got the hood, the robe, the water, the sword. They all have a significance according to them. They all think they rely on Christianity.
The Klan has 7 official symbols. The Bible, the basis of this organization rooted in Christianity. The flag, whether it be the Confederate flag representing the southern states, or the Star-Spangled Banner, the American flag. Water, which is used to purify. The sword, which symbolizes the use of the law to fight the enemies of the Klan. And finally, the 3 most well-known symbols, the cross, which is burned during official ceremonies, the robe, and the famous pointed hood.
The very specific kind of Klan uniform that we think about today, the pointy white hood, the white robes, what it is intended to do is create an aesthetic solidarity and a physical solidarity. That you would have row after row after row of robed Klansmen marching through the streets.
While the white robes and hood may be closely linked to the image of the Ku Klux Klan in our collective unconscious, each person's costume actually varies based on their status in the organization. This secret society has a strict hierarchical structure. At the bottom are the Klansmen, the regular members of the Ku Klux Klan who wear white robes. Just above them are the Nighthawks, who wear black robes and are in charge of security. Next comes the chaplain, who wears a white robe and a red scarf. Chaplains are the preachers of the group. An exalted Cyclops is someone who is a citywide Klan leader. They wear black robes with a red scarf. Cluds are in charge of recruitment and wear white robes with a purple scarf. Grand Dragons are leaders for an entire state and wear green robes. Finally, at the very top of the pyramid is the Imperial Wizard, who wears purple robes and is the supreme leader of the Ku Klux Klan for the entirety of the United States.
The second Klan is a very formal hierarchical group. William Joseph Simmons establishes himself as the first Imperial Wizard, establishes this system of national, state level, and local officers through which there's a real top-down hierarchy.
When I was the Grand Dragon, I used to tell everybody, you don't need to be called anything like, you know, the Imperial Wizard, the Exalted Cyclops, anything. You're a Klansman. You have a white robe. That's it. That's all that matters.
This communication strategy built around their new image was a success. By the mid-1920s, Hiram Evans, the new Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, was at the head of a group nearly 4 million strong and had tens of millions of dollars to his name, making him one of the most powerful and influential men in the United States at the time. In 1925, he organized a major Ku Klux Klan march in the American capital of Washington, D.C.
The Klan's attitude was, if we wave a flag and invoke the name of God, then our cause is just.
In 1925, they marched down, the street in Washington, D.C. to the Capitol. It's just huge. All the states, you begin to have that go on for a while, Klans everywhere.
Marched by 40,000 robed Klansmen down Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. It was really an incredible sight. This was a show of force and a dramatic parade that very much put the Klan, in the faces of all of Americans.
This demonstration of force had a single goal: to impose the KKK's xenophobic political ideas on others. But times had changed since the Civil War, and their list of enemies was no longer limited to just black people.
The problem in the United States was mass immigration from Europe. It was considered a problem for Americans who had been there for a long time, whose grandparents and even great-grandparents were American, and who believed that the new arrivals represented a danger to them.
They were either Catholics from Southern Europe, Jews from Eastern Europe, and what we had then is a version of what white nationalists today are calling fear of replacement.
To support the Great Replacement theory, the Ku Klux Klan leaned heavily on the idea of the mob. At the time, in New York, Chicago, and Las Vegas, the mafia bosses, the symbol of crime in the United States, were Al Capone and Dutch Schultz, and were often of Italian or Jewish heritage.
For the Klan, they were everywhere, so they had to fight them in any way possible. Hence, the immigration laws were passed in 1921 and 1924, as well as the prohibition of alcoholic beverages, which was adopted by a constitutional amendment.
They were, as evangelical Protestants, very strong prohibitionists. They were also preaching this moralism about sex.
But this Protestant Puritan organization that claimed to be defending the values of white America would soon find itself at the heart of a very sordid affair.
D.C. Stevenson, who had been the Grand Dragon of Indiana, had been really one of the most powerful leaders nationally in the Klan, who is tried and convicted of murder after he sexually assaults and brutalizes a young woman, Madge Oberholzer.
He kidnapped his assistant, he tortured her, he murdered her. When her body was found, her body was literally stabbed all over.
This became public, and he was ultimately convicted and sent to prison. As the years passed, it became apparent that many Klan leaders were just utter hypocrites. And as this kind of hypocrisy was exposed more and more, the Klan was ultimately destroyed.
Once again, the Ku Klux Klan's attempt to impose its political beliefs on others seemed to have hit a dead end. For the next 30 years, the Ku Klux Klan, now led by Samuel Green, tried however they could to keep the flame alive by filming propaganda videos.
For 5,000 years, the white man has been the supreme race. We, the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, intend to keep it the white race.
In the early 1950s, with America in the midst of an economic boom, the Ku Klux Klan was struggling to survive and seemed to be out of step with the day and age. Yet one event would change everything.
In the 1950s, what happened was you had a number of legal cases that were going through the Supreme Court that was challenging Jim Crow and legal segregation.
The Supreme Court ruling in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. That is the incredibly important Supreme Court ruling which at least legally ended segregation in American schools.
African American citizens could now attend whatever school they liked, eat in any restaurant, and sit wherever they wanted on buses and in movie theaters. This marked the beginning of the civil rights movement in the U.S., during which a few iconic figures would personify the black community's fight for equality all over the country.
Black men and white men will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
There was a racial desegregation movement that was represented by Rosa Parks in 1957 and Martin Luther King Jr. in the 1960s, which reflected major societal changes in the United States in the 20th century.
In that period, America went through enormous social changes, in particular with respect to the rights and roles of black people in this country, as well, of course, as the rise of, rock and roll and a youth counterculture. Things were changing and changing very, very rapidly.
In the South, a large portion of the white community was fiercely opposed to these changes. They wanted to keep segregation between blacks and whites at any cost.
I wasn't forced to go to school with them. I wasn't forced to eat with them. And I want them to have at least the right that I had. I think has rights in this country. He should have equal rights, but separate rights. It's worked for 100 years in the South, and I think it will work now.
This reactionary mindset was very widespread, including amongst the political class in the southern U.S., where people like George Wallace, the powerful governor of Alabama, made a violent speech in 1963 supporting the preservation of racial segregation.
I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
George Wallace's election platform could be summed up in 3 words: segregation, segregation, segregation. He believed that something so deeply anchored in the South's past could not simply be made to disappear.
In Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Louisiana, and Mississippi, all across the southern United States, many white people were hostile to these changes. This was enough for the Ku Klux Klan to rise from the ashes once again.
They want to throw white children and colored children into the melting pot of integration, out of which will come a conglomerated, mulatto, mongrel class of people. Both races will be destroyed in such a movement.
This new Klan embraced the traditions from the turn of the century: white robes, pointed hoods, initiation ceremonies, and burning crosses, which became the ultimate symbol of the organization. This movement was renamed the United Klans of America by its new leader.
The Imperial Wizard of the United Klans of America, Mr. Robert M. Shelton, Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
With his well-tailored suits and impeccable haircut, Robert Shelton, the new Imperial Wizard, cultivated a polished image, and he turned out to be a very charismatic leader.
The Negro problem does not worry me near as much as the other issues at stake. I am worried about the future generations on the battleground.
But behind this respectable appearance, the new incarnation of the KKK returned to the extreme violence of its early years just after the Civil War.
Anytime minorities start to make progress in this country, you get that type of reaction. These old feelings of hatred, which have always been there, they bubble back up again.
It's a return to violence as a way to intimidate a community And as such, that violence is designed to be very, very public and very, very evident. It's an outgrowth of what we often talk about as spectacle lynching. The idea of these murders as a means to draw attention.
Murder, lynching, and attacks. The 50s and 60s saw a rise of what seemed to be unstoppable violence. In Washington, U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson made fighting the KKK one of his top priorities. He asked J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, to send men into the field to bring down the terrorist organization.
The Klan was a priority. For instance, in Meridian, Mississippi, there was a small FBI office that had 3 agents in it. Within a week, there were 150 agents working out of that small office in an adjoining motel. The director of the FBI flooded the state with FBI agents. They opened new offices all around the state, specifically to investigate Klan activity.
With Special Agent Roy Moore in the lead, the FBI took drastic steps to try to neutralize the Ku Klux Klan, especially in Mississippi, where the far-right organization was suspected of having been involved in the mysterious disappearance of 3 civil rights activists. Within a few weeks, 18 members of the KKK had been arrested. Thanks to the information gathered through questioning, Roy Moore and his team were able to identify the man behind the operation. His name was Samuel Bowers, none other than the Grand Dragon for the state of Mississippi.
Sam Bowers was the head of the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan in Mississippi, which was responsible for at least 10 killings we know of here in Mississippi, probably more. And it was the most violent Klan organization in the United States, and greatly feared, obviously.
Sam Bowers is probably one of the best-known, ill-reputed Klansmen from Mississippi. He recruited, essentially trained Klan members for the missions that he had planned for them.
Despite all the best efforts of Samuel Bowers and his Klan to sow terror and discourage African Americans from registering to vote, on August 4th, 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, forbidding racial discrimination in the right to vote. Bowers took revenge by ordering the murder of Vernon Dahmer, a civil rights activist.
Vernon Dahmer was a farmer, businessman, entrepreneur. He really believed that voting rights truly came to Black Mississippians, that things would begin to change. And so the Klan didn't like that and attacked him and his family in the middle of the night, January 10th, 1966.
There were 2 carloads of armed individuals that attacked us about 2 o'clock in the morning. Started shooting into the house, throwing bottles of gasoline in, and throwing torches in after to set the house on fire. And my dad fought him off in a gun battle that eventually cost him his life. He was never shot. He died from asphyxiation from inhaling the flames that burnt his respiratory system.
After Vernon Dahmer was killed, the pressure on Bowers began to ratchet up. The FBI finally had the Grand Wizard of the Mississippi KKK in its sights. Yet despite the evidence they had gathered and the confessions of some of Bowers' men, those responsible for the crime were given negligible sentences, and Bowers himself was acquitted by a white jury. This impunity hardly came as a surprise.
Into the mid-60s, many, many white Southerners viewed the Klan as, well, they weren't very nice people, but they're doing something that has to be done, which is defending our children from desegregation, defending our children from having to sit in the same classroom as Black children.
In that context of segregation and white supremacy, there is community complicity in these crimes because there is a choice that is being made here that says, we will look the other way, that we will not condemn this violence, that we will not condemn particularly the ideals behind that violence.
But the impunity of the Ku Klux Klan members would soon come to an end. In 1971, Bill Baxley, just 30 years old at the time, was named Attorney General of Alabama. He decided to reopen the investigation into the death of 4 young girls during a bombing in Birmingham 8 years earlier. The primary suspect was a man named Robert Chambliss, and despite all the evidence against him, he was still free.
Chambliss was the ringleader of the group in Birmingham. He was more responsible than anybody else, but I think he was over 40 bombings in Birmingham over a period of 20 plus years. And he was the moving force behind those bombings. And in fact, he got a nickname, Dynamite Bob.
At the time, Bill Baxley's crusade against the man responsible for the attack, an influential member of the Ku Klux Klan, resulted in numerous threats.
This is a letter that was received in my office. Dear Mr. Baxley, we would like to congratulate you. We hope that you are proud of yourself now. You in capitals, white N-word. We hope and pray that you are soon blessed with the same condition that the N-word lover Kennedy contracted, which is, in capitals, dead. A long time dead. It may happen sooner than you think, too. KKK.
Despite multiple intimidation attempts, Bill Baxley was determined to stand up to the KKK and refuse to give up.
Our response to your letter is, kiss my A blank blank. Sincerely, Bill Baxley. He demanded a response, and so I responded.
In 1977, Baxley succeeded in getting Robert Chambliss sentenced to life in prison. From then on, the primary leaders of the KKK would all be held responsible for their crimes one way or another. Samuel Bowers, the man behind the murder of Vernon Dahmer and the Mississippi burning, and his lieutenant, Edgar Ray Killen, were each condemned in turn. As for Robert Shelton, the imperial wizard of the Klan, he was sentenced to pay $7 million to Beulah May, the mother of Michael Donald, a young African-American who was lynched by his men in 1981.
His mother filed a lawsuit against the Ku Klux Klan, and the jury, the judge, ruled in her favor and basically forced the Klan to pay her for the lynching of her son. In other words, what this did was it broke the Klan, it bankrupted the Klan.
Since the fall of this last major historic leader, not a single credible successor has succeeded in taking over.
There are a number of small groups that meet, that espouse Klan rhetoric. They don't have any financial power. For the most part, the majority of members are lower middle class.
Klan groups today tend to be very small groups, almost universally come from rural parts of the country. There are no Klan groups in cities anywhere anymore. And they typically are centered around one family. So, the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan is now Tom Robb, his wife, a couple of their kids, and half a dozen of their friends who live down the road.
While Thomas Robb, a pastor from Arkansas, may claim to be the leader of the most important national Klan organization, his legitimacy is all the more questionable because the KKK itself now represents just a few minority groups in the United States and has only 4,500 members in a country with a population of nearly 350 million.
The Klan, which was once the core of the American extreme right, is now, a sorry, sad shadow of its former self. And in fact, the neo-Nazis and the skinheads and various other components of the American radical right look at the Klan as, trailer trash. These are people who live in trailers, they're poor people, they're stupid, they're not educated.
It kind of struck me as, it's like a barbecue. People may not have very many teeth in their head, but it was just a bunch of hillbillies basically running around, cooking hot dogs, hamburgers, except they were wearing bed sheets and pillowcases on their head.
Ken Parker got to see behind the scenes of this less than glamorous reality when he himself was a member of the KKK. He still bears the marks today.
This is an owl right here.
I had a tattoo artist that covered it up just to erase hateful messages. This used to be a swastika, like the American History X style tattoo. This one right here, you see the 4 Ks, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. They call it my oak, mystic insignia of a Klansman. But it's going to be gone shortly as well.
After initially being drawn to their image and political ideals, Ken eventually discovered a reality that was far from what he had expected at the time.
So the Klan, like back in the day, they used to lynch, they used to burn churches. As Grand Dragon, yeah, I did have a specific agenda. It was to basically build up like standby army to stand up and take America back, that we would be there to do it. Now all the Klan does is throw flyers out. To get ranked up in a Klan requires, like, you go out and you recruit people, you attend rallies, you go out and throw out your stupid little flyers.
Ken Parker's story is one of a white man from the American South who, after years as a Klan member and neo-Nazi, finally decided to turn his back on hate and violence. The man who inspired his redemption is Pastor William McKinnon.
All of a sudden, one day, I'm sitting by the pool with me and my ex-fiance, and a black pastor comes up.
The first time I met Ken, we was living in the same apartment complex. At the time, I did not know he was part of the KKK or neo-Nazi. It was just him and his girlfriend, and I just spoke to him, and we sat down, we talked at the table with some other neighbors, and we began to know each other.
And he's like, Ken, I don't know what to tell you about that. All I know is Jesus is love. And I was like, wow, that makes the most sense out of any answer I've ever gotten. So at that point in my life, I was like, you know, who am I to make all these judgment calls? Like, oh, you're Jewish, you're black, you're this, you're that, let me kill you. No, that's, Pastor Will definitely showed me, yeah, Jesus is love.
But in the land of Uncle Sam, hate still casts a long shadow. It's embodied by people like Dylan Roof, who killed 9 African Americans in a church in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015, and Peyton Gendron, who murdered 13 members of the black community in cold blood at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York in May 2022. Each one showing in their own way that it's still dangerous to be black in America, even today.
Today, the people we see, the Dylan Roofs of the world and so on, are people who were not members of any group, never were, but have absorbed the basic ideas of white people are under attack by their enemies. Jews, black people, brown people, immigrants, gay people, and so on.
2 mass killings perpetrated by very young men who were just 18 and 21, respectively, when they committed their crimes. A new generation of white supremacists, the heirs of the Ku Klux Klan, radicalized by spending hours on conspiracy websites, as well as far-right groups preaching hate on social media.
In 2015, when Dylan Roof obviously went to that church in Charleston and killed those 9 beautiful people and injured many others, what he had been doing prior to that was going on a website that was essentially the descendant of the White Citizens Council here in Mississippi. And that was what he read right before he went to church.
The situation has only gotten worse after the 4 chaotic years of Donald Trump's presidency. In his wake, he left a diseased and deeply divided country, as was demonstrated by the lamentable attacks on the U.S. Capitol. A country with, on one side, the Black Lives Matter movement, which shows the African American community's determination to fight back against acts of systemic racism, such as the murder of George Floyd, a symbol of recurring police brutality against black people. And on the other side, white supremacists, who have been encouraged by Trump's violent populist discourse to embrace racism openly, proving that while the Ku Klux Klan may not hold the power it once did, its legacy and ideals have sadly never been stronger.